He's on a whole different level. He just raised his hand, called out twice, and a 1,000-pound caribou walked straight to him. Maybe this really is the year he drops 2 caribou. He's been smashing records all season. The 4-beaver tally has already made history, and Nero alone has bagged 2 of them. He's poised to be this season's dark horse, unseating Lake and sprinting toward that $500,000.
I've got food to last a long time.
Right as Nero moves to handle the last of the oyster meat, an eagle landing on a branch above snaps him to attention. This guy isn't here for the view. It's got its eye on the feast in Nero's hands.
Damn.
That eagle swooping is a red flag. This oyster has broadcast scent to every scavenger. If he doesn't rush to stash the hard-won meat, it'll soon become an open buffet for every scavenger around. He doesn't waste time and pulls out the beaver hide he dried. He's about to rig up a fresh meat sling. He punches a line of small holes around the hide's edge. He laces the paracord through the holes, then tugs it in the middle. Just like that, a beaver hide meat sling takes shape under his hands. It's no beauty, but it's tailor-made for hauling beaver meat. In a way, it's like letting the beaver return to its food cache by another route. Right now, Nero's stash could keep him fed for a good long while. His biggest headache is no longer what he'll eat next, but how to guard these hard-won supplies. While everyone else is still chasing their next meal, the caribou is already working out how not to let the wilderness steal his. Once he's got the meat stash handled, he can finally head back to his shelter and really breathe. This small cabin he built himself doesn't just keep out the wind and rain. Over this solitude, it started to feel like home. When he first came to this delta, Nero still held a lot of resistance in his heart, not even sure he could ever really belong in this strange land. But as his stay grew longer and longer, the mountains here, the animals here, and the food he harvested himself daily gradually narrowed the distance between him and the wild. Once just an outsider challenger, Nero now has started to feel that he was meant to come here. The sun dips behind the far-off peaks. In this moment, Nero isn't just taking what he needs from the land. This wilderness is feeding him, and without realizing it, he has become a part of it. While Nero is savoring the easy days 2 beavers bought him, Aaron has already followed the river to the next den of a water engineer. It seems that this season's beavers, this winter's beavers, won't get much peace. The surest way to draw one out is to tear down what it cares about most. Aaron deliberately damages a small section of the dam, then quietly leaves the scene. Beavers are extremely sensitive to the integrity of their dams. As soon as they notice a change in water level, there's a high chance they'll come out overnight to repair it. By then, Aaron only needs to lie in wait nearby to have a shot at turning this water engineer into his own fat reserves. The owner of that dam has probably already cursed this 2-legged outsider a dozen times in its heart. After setting up the beaver ambush, Aaron moves on to inspect the snares along the way. He's not starving yet, but he's still a long way from truly having no worries about food and drink. On top of that, these trap lines sit a good ways from camp. Just hiking this loop every day eats up calories fast. Luckily, fresh rabbit tracks in the snow give Aaron fresh hope. This area in front of him is very likely the regular commute route of the snowshoe hare, so he trailed the path and dropped a few extra snares along it. Don't sleep on passive hunting. It works without anyone watching most of the time. But once you lay down enough traps, it's like hiring dozens of employees to work the forest for you around the clock. And all they cost him is a little wire and patience. At the next line of traps, a rabbit dangling in the snare, about to clock out, and the loop had cinched perfectly around its neck, so it hadn't struggled for long. So the meat was untouched, and he could finally count on a hot meal tonight. But the surprises weren't done yet. Up ahead, another rabbit suddenly popped into view. Aaron rushed back for his bow and arrows, then dropped it with a single clean shot. This was a setup. Traps covered the wait for rabbits work, and the bow covered attacks. He'd fully mastered this dual hunting system. When a third rabbit wandered in, Aaron nailed a clean triple kill in one day. Yesterday, he'd barely managed to fill his stomach. Today, he was already planning a balanced menu of rabbit, beaver, and lynx. Seems once a guy starts winning, even his smack talk levels up. Aaron made no effort to hide how badly he wanted to win. He hadn't come here to find himself, and he certainly wasn't here to admire the forest scenery. To put it bluntly, he was here for that $500,000. In Aaron's mind, if you're not in a competition to win, you might as well stay home and play cards. He'd been fiercely competitive to the core since he was a kid. Even a simple game with his wife could leave them both flushed, arguing over who came out on top. So this solo survival in the wilderness was easily the wildest contest he'd ever been in. While dressing the rabbit, Aaron gutted it first, already picturing a pot of rich broth. The meat itself went straight from his hands to his mouth. Small as it was, what it lacked in bulk, it made up for in firm flesh, rich in protein and trace elements. For Aaron, after a full day on the move, it hit him like a perfectly timed shot of recovery. But even as he ate the hot rabbit meat, His mind refused to idle. He was already quietly sizing up the other contestants' weaknesses. Some had no ferro rod, some wore leather boots risking frostbitten feet, and some had 4 kids waiting at home and would eventually tap out for missing them. He had no kids tugging at his heart and no pull to head home early. He was basically eliminating the others one by one in his head before they'd even reached the final round. Yet this wilderness game was clearly not going to go as smoothly as Aaron had imagined. Early the next morning, he headed back to his trapline to check it, hoping to repeat yesterday's rabbit bonanza. Instead, what he first saw in the snow was a line of tracks from a large feline. Judging from the size of the prints and the path they took, it was most likely a lynx. What really thrilled Aaron was seeing a tripped snare. He figured he was about to collect the season's first fat lynx. But when he got there, the snare was empty. The noose lay tossed aside, the animal gone without a trace. And it didn't stop there. At the beaver spot, Aaron saw another trap had disappeared, anchor and all. After some searching, he realized the beaver had slipped the trap entirely. It had hauled the whole rig off a long way. So then, the lynx was toying with his snares, and the beaver had packed his gear and taken it. Back home, Aaron had set more traps than he could count. But out here in the Arctic wilds, he'd been outplayed by 2 animals so badly he felt like a greenhorn starting out. Yesterday, he'd been picturing a balanced menu of rabbit, beaver, and lynx, and today, he had the sting of being outfoxed by his own prey. But Aaron had no intention of backing down. Once a lynx started working his trap line, it wouldn't just keep wrecking his traps. It might also steal any rabbits he caught later. In Aaron's eyes, this big cat was no longer a wild animal. It was a rival trying to snatch away his prize money. You don't mess with 2 things: a man's cash and the rabbits he sweated for. A wife and kids can wait. Aaron didn't have those yet. So for now, the rabbits came first. After resetting his traps, Aaron pushed on, widening his search area. Moving through a dense stand of trees, a fresh line of caribou tracks ahead jolted him to full alert. From the sign, this caribou had just come through, and it was heading in the general direction of his camp. Aaron immediately followed the tracks. To him right now, a rabbit was just a one-and-done snack, while a full-grown caribou could keep him in meat and fat for months. Put simply, this wasn't an ordinary line of tracks. It was $500,000 that had walked past him. Aaron didn't let up for a moment, staying on high alert the whole way, afraid the caribou might pop up close, and he'd miss it. But following a big animal like this is far from as easy as it sounds. A moose's big ears catch even the tiniest sound from far off. That day, the wind not only shredded every sound, it also wiped the tracks from the snow in no time. Once you lose the trail, kilometers of tracking become wasted calories, yet Aaron still pushed on for 5 kilometers. Ultimately, that moose never even thought about stopping, and this kind of hard, long-distance push not only failed to bring in food, it let nature strip away a chunk of his energy. Fortunately, fresh tracks soon appeared again near camp, making Aaron sure the moose would be back before long. So he cleared a shooting lane in advance along the game trail, so that if the moose passed through again, this spot would become the perfect ambush point. Sure enough, after a long wait, that moose worth $500,000 in prize money really did reappear in the clearing.
You want him to come back to here.
If we get a moose, I'll have all the fat, all the food. We can ride this out till we win.
They were a short distance apart, with an ideal angle for the shot. Aaron slowly drew his bow, pinning all his hopes on this one arrow. But as the bowstring snapped forward, the arrowhead grazed past the moose and slammed into a tree trunk ahead. That tiny 2-inch miss was all it took to send that almost won $500,000 bolting back into the forest. Even worse, Aaron was down to very few arrowheads, so even if he kept tracking, the chances of landing another clean shot were low. As the moose slipped away, Aaron felt himself coming apart. Such perfect distance, such an ideal shooting lane. When error was least tolerable, the deadliest slip-up struck. That single missed arrow didn't just cost him a moose, it cost him the huge edge that might have won the whole competition. Aaron just about wants to smack himself right there, but time doesn't run backward. And the moose isn't about to hang around and offer him a do-over for a careful shot. The previous contestant missed his first shot too, but eventually he got another chance. While Aaron's down to almost no arrowheads, and this ambush that had looked like a sure win ends in the most heartbreaking way. When you're down on your luck, even nature piles on. Yesterday, the lynx slipped away, and the beaver made off with his trap. Today, a moose within arm's reach slips away. Even Aaron, usually so upbeat, can't help beginning to doubt himself now. But he also knows full well that home is just a phone call away. In no time, he could be back on a couch with a hot pizza. The cost would be tossing out everything he's worked for, like quitting cigarettes after years. You know you could satisfy the craving in a few seconds, but once you light up again, everything you've endured and stuck with goes straight back to zero. So no matter how unlucky today is, Aaron has no intention of putting tapping out on his list of options. Besides, the moose's tracks are still showing up near camp. As long as this beast keeps circling and he can get his arrowheads, that $500,000 opportunity isn't truly over yet.
Timber missed a moose and he got it.
And the Tim Aaron mentions is that legendary moose hunter from season 11. What's striking is how eerily alike their stories are. When that first chance came, Tim didn't get his moose on that first shot either, but a few days later, the same animal came back and stood in front of him again. And that return became the most iconic hunt of season 11. From Aaron's perspective, if Tim could wait out a second chance, then maybe he still has a shot too. Not every contestant gets to encounter a moose worth $500,000, and what truly keeps people going is often the most unremarkable food. Jax's breakfast today is just a few rose hips, sucking the pulp from the tip of each fruit and spitting out the tight clump of seeds. It's hardly a feast, but at least it adds a bit of vitamins, so he's not running entirely on thin air. Yet, just as he's about to head out to forage, a line of unfamiliar tracks in the snow makes Jax freeze in his tracks. Judging from the paw shape and the way they move, it's most likely a lynx, and the prints aren't far from the shelter, which means that every night when he's asleep, there's probably a four-legged neighbor pacing back and forth nearby. Lynx rarely attack adults, but in a wilderness, this short on food, nothing is guaranteed. Who can say it won't one night decide Jax is on the menu? Especially with his shelter entrance still wide open.
Se davvero un animale entrasse a mezzanotte, non è certo una cosa che sistemi urlandogli dietro 2 volte.
So Jax changes his plan. Today, he won't look for food. First, he'll build a door for the shelter. You can live with hunger for a while, but if you don't feel safe when you sleep, every night can turn into psychological torture. He measures the doorway, then uses timber to build a square frame. You have to admit, the door's dimensions are ideal. Its length and width match the opening, saving him cutting and fiddling slowly takes shape. The once wide open entrance of the shelter finally has a real barrier. But for Jax, this wooden door blocks more than cold wind and wild animals. Those lynx tracks also drag him back to that night 21 years ago that changed his life forever. Back then, at just 19, he was kidnapped by 2 men on his way home alone. They dragged him somewhere unknown, where he endured unspeakable harm, and in the end, they abandoned him there by himself. The wounds on his body might slowly heal with time, but that sense of losing control, terror of no escape, has lived in his body ever since. So when he once again finds himself in the dark, once again sensing a predator lurking nearby, those memories that had been pushed down begin to resurface bit by bit. Jax isn't really scared of the lynx. What terrifies him is being pulled back into that night when he couldn't fight back. But this time, it's different. Now he can raise his own shelter. He can make weapons for himself, and he can put up a door to protect himself before danger arrives. One of the reasons he chose life alone in the wilderness might be not to prove he's never felt fear, but to show that when fear comes back, he can still hold on to his own choices and keep control. When the last piece of wood is fixed in place, Jax closes the shelter door. Most cold wind is shut out, and if the lynx sneaks in for a midnight snack, it must first get through this Tomb Raider door. A plain-looking door. Not only makes the shelter safer, it also helps Jax regain a bit of that long-lost sense of control. But a door alone is far from enough. There are still plenty of gaps around the shelter, and cold wind can still slip in through the walls. Using the fact that the shore soil hasn't yet frozen solid in the cold, Jax decides to collect mud and seal every crack in the walls. The mud packs into the spaces between the logs, reducing cold air coming in, and once it slowly dries, it will form a natural windbreak. The insulation is great, but the weight is absolutely unreasonable. Each time Jax drags a load of mud from the shore, it's like lugging a boulder back to her shelter. On top of that, she's living mostly on berries and wild greens. Her income is tiny, and now she has to fuel a high-energy project. It's like she's paying for the shelter in installments with her own body. But Jax doesn't stop. She presses the mud into every single crack in the walls, bit by bit. This mechanical, repetitive motion actually helps her emotions gradually settle. In trauma recovery, repetitive and steady rhythms can sometimes help the brain rebuild a sense of safety and order. And right now, this repeated motion of smearing mud is, for Jax, it's a quiet kind of therapy. Once, she'd lost all control over her body and her life. Now she can personally decide every detail of this shelter. Bit by bit, gap by gap, it seems like she's just fixing a wall. But really, she's also healing a heart that was once broken. As the shelter becomes more and more airtight, Jax's emotional state visibly shifts. In the morning, when she found the lynx tracks, she was still on high alert. By afternoon, the girl suffocated by fear had become Jax again, the one brimming with curiosity about the wild. With his tasks done and hunger gnawing at him, he set off to check the nearby snares. His mood was already lighter today, and he wondered if the traps might hold a surprise. He hasn't gone far when Jax spots clear signs of activity near the game trail, and sure enough, one of his snares has successfully caught a rabbit. In the morning, he'd still been picking at a few rose hips, just scraping by. And by the afternoon, nature went ahead and served him a full rabbit feast. This rabbit showing up clearly meant more than just fixing one meal. Back at camp, he pauses to genuinely thank the rabbit for becoming his food. For him, survival skills were once more than just a hobby. During his long journey of healing from trauma, they helped him reconnect with his body, a path back to his own strength. It was by staying close to nature, and only then did he slowly see he wasn't fated to spend his life running from fear. Once he's done, Jax sets the rabbit's brain over the coals to roast. Blood streaks his hands and pants, but he's sharper now than he was that morning. Plants had only just held off the hollow in his gut. What truly restores his strength is this hard-won protein. With a mouthful of hot rabbit meat sliding down his throat, Jax can once again feel his body slowly waking up. The whole day's experience seems to have reaffirmed something for him. By the fire now, Jax feels at last that he's becoming who he was always meant to be. Someone who is afraid, yet keeps moving forward. Jax uses a wooden door to reclaim courage to face fears. Will, meanwhile, savors a rare hot wash in the wild, slicing his only t-shirt in half. Slice it in two, dunk the cloths in hot water, and scrub myself clean. It's nothing like the bathtub back home. But for Will, who hasn't had a proper wash in over 20 days, this one hot towel already feels like a luxury spa in the middle of the Arctic. Only when he rubs grime from behind his ears does he start worrying that his wife will be disgusted seeing this on TV. But after seconds of thought, he asks the cameraman to ensure it airs. Seems that after enough time out here, your skin really does toughen up. Even the grime on you starts begging for screen time. Once he's finished this quick wash, Will shifts his focus back outside his shelter. With Arctic temperatures still falling, the north wind cutting through camp keeps growing harsher. Even though the shelter holds heat pretty well, there's still no barrier on the windward side. Cold air pours in through doorway and wall gaps, draining heat inside. Will decides to build a separate windbreak outside the shelter. He first uses fallen, thick tree trunks as the main frame, then piles the spruce and willow branches he's cut over them, so the north wind blowing in hits this barrier first. By the time it hits the shelter, it's already lost much of its speed and punch. It may look like just a wall of branches, but once the real deep winter sets in, every bit of warmth it traps could be the edge that keeps Will in the game. They're in the third week now. Will's still stocked with supplies, and his shelter keeps getting better, and even his confidence is piling up higher and higher. Along with this windbreak, Will believes he has what it takes to win, but he doesn't see that victory as his alone. He wants that win to show the world who the Inupiaq people really are. For so long, outsiders' views of them seemed frozen on igloos and fur clothing, on a life spent in ice and snow, when in reality, Inupiaq culture is far richer than those cliches. They know how to read ice and weather, how to find game, how to turn what the land offers into tools and shelter. Will's choice to live here alone is his way of showing that the Inupiaq aren't just some ancient people frozen in history books. Their culture is still very much alive today. Yet as a boy, Will once felt deeply ashamed of his own identity. After leaving his tight-knit village for a big Alaskan city to go to school, he was suddenly among kids whose lives were nothing like his. When Will told his classmates that he liked eating seal meat and muktuk, what he got wasn't understanding, but looks of disgust and mocking laughter. Those strange, judging eyes made young Will start to question why he had to be an Inupiaq kid, why he couldn't just be like his classmates, with a self that never needed explaining. That boy who once wanted only to disappear because of cultural differences stands on a world-class survival stage, drawing on knowledge his ancestors passed down to build his own home. The windbreak wall he builds doesn't just block the Arctic wind. It's like Will is personally shutting out those voices that once made him deny who he was. As he lays the last spruce branches in place, the outer wall guarding his shelter finally stands finished. Will even tidies up the leftover branches and debris around it because respect for the land is another value the Inupiaq have kept for generations. He figured once the windbreak was up, the days ahead would settle into a steady upward climb. But the real crisis doesn't come from blizzards or wild animals. It comes from his gut, wanting to boost efficiency processing firewood. Will builds a simple sawhorse. Once the logs are secured on the frame, they stop rolling around, and he eases the strain on his lower back and energy from all that bending over. But after only a few logs, a sharp wave of stomach cramps forces him to stop. By now, Will's gone nearly 10 days without a bowel movement. His gut occasionally gurgles, tight with bloating and spasms. He can't tell if his gut is truly blocked or if he's just been eating so little for so long that there isn't enough to trigger a normal bowel movement. But after 10 days of nothing happening, it's past the point where drink more hot water could help. In truth, even though Will's been catching rabbits and fish during this time, most of what he's been eating is high protein, low fat meat. Living on lean meat alone without enough fat and plant fiber not only leaves him short on energy, it can also slow intestinal motility further. What Will needs now is more than just more food. He needs fat, fuel to get his body working right again. So when he sees black bear tracks near a moose trail, Will doesn't feel fear. Instead, he's discovered a walking warehouse of fat. This time of year, black bears are in a frenzy to bulk up for hibernation, their bodies loaded with fat. If he could take this bear, it might not only clear his constipation at once, it could also lock in his winter energy needs all at once. Based on the track size, it's likely a black bear. If they were from a grizzly, the paw prints would be noticeably larger. Will immediately follows the trail, already picturing himself taking the bear with his bow and arrows, and his family circled, melting fat and working the meat together. But this time, the trail doesn't end as he'd hoped. The bear's tracks finally vanished deep in the forest. Though disappointed, Will stayed calm. As long as the bear kept roaming his area, there'd still be a chance later for it to offer up all that fat. Back at camp, instead of burning more energy, Will sat down and carved a few small wooden spoons. Each spoon was sized for his wife and each of his children at home, and even the youngest baby had a tiny spoon made just for them. In addition, he whittled a small version of himself from Alone Season 13 to bring home as a gift for his son. These seemingly insignificant trinkets carried a father's deepest longing for his family, and he meant the mementos he'd carry from the Arctic. But as his spirits lifted, his body didn't. To get his bowels moving again, Will downed cup after cup of Labrador tea, hoping the hot water and herbs would kickstart a gut stalled too long. But nothing changed. His body grew weaker and weaker. His hunger ebbed away. Even when rabbits still showed up in his traps, Will no longer felt that old thrill at the sight of food. He had plenty of food for nearly a week, but he couldn't make himself eat so much as a mouthful of rabbit or fish. That was the truly frightening part. Without taking in energy, his body would keep wearing down. Chronic constipation and gut cramps could progress to a blocked intestine, infection, and worse harm to his body. Will started to fear that if he kept pushing himself, the price might not just be losing the competition, but leaving his 4 children without a father. His mind still burned with resolve, but even getting out of bed had become very hard. And he spent almost the entire next morning lying in bed. Each attempt to sit up saps his strength, and he knows the longer he remains here, the more likely it is his body and digestive system will be damaged for good. And the $500,000 prize from this competition wasn't nearly worth risking his life for. On the 30th day, he finally reached for the satellite phone. He spoke the words he least wanted to admit.
Hey, it's Will. I'm officially tapping out.
He decides to quit the competition, and as soon as he makes the call, Will falls apart completely. Because even to the very end, it wasn't hunger, loneliness, or cold that beat him. What truly forced him to leave was a body that could no longer carry out his will. Perhaps the harshest truth of surviving in the wild. Winning or losing isn't decided by toughness, but on whose body can follow that unyielding heart the longest. Will once believed that by coming here meant he had to win. That only by taking the championship could he truly represent the Inupiaq people on the world stage. Will finally realizes that from the moment he set foot on this land, he had already fulfilled his mission. In the Inupiaq way, he built shelter, crafted tools, found food, and honored the land, and let the world see the wisdom of this ancient people. Victory is not only about walking away with $500,000. For the little boy who once felt ashamed of his identity, simply being able now to stand proudly in front of the camera, saying openly that he is Inupiaq is already a victory many years in the making. He also finally realizes that his ancestors' knowledge never needed books or TV to prove its worth. It lives in the memories of the elders, in every hunt, every tool, and every story passed down orally. What Will must do next is to pass on everything he learned from his elders, to teach it to his 4 children. Perhaps years from now, they will still remember there was a little boy from the tundra, carrying the culture handed down by his ancestors, and stepped onto the global wilderness survival stage. Though he did not make it to the end, he allowed more people, for the first time, to see who the Inupiaq are.